Welcome to the Reddit Scientist. Grab your blanket and get ready for 2 hours of petrifying bedtime stories. Girlfriend wouldn't stop whistling, so I smashed a cast iron pan into her skull. We'd been together almost a year, and last month we moved in together. It felt like the next natural step, until she began whistling that same haunting melody over and over everywhere she went. At first it was almost charming, a gentle tune as she showered, like her own private theme song. But soon it followed me into every room, filling the kitchen while she cooked, echoing off the walls as she worked on her laptop, even rising in the background of our movie nights. I tried to ignore it. I asked what the song was. She laughed and shrugged as if she barely noticed the constant stream of notes escaping her lips. I suggested we play some music instead, hoping the distraction of a playlist would break the habit, but she just huffed, continued whistling. When I gently asked again, she denied it outright, insisting she wasn't doing it. I felt my patience fraying. One evening I was buried in work and the tune crept in again, relentless, piercing, unbearably loud. I warned her softly, "Please, can you stop?" But she looked up with blank eyes, refused to acknowledge me. I felt something inside me snap. I grabbed the heavy cast iron pan from the stove and swung it in a rage I barely recognized as my own. It connected with her skull. In a sickening thud, she collapsed, her head cracking against the counter, blood spilling across the floor. I stood in stunned silence as she lay motionless, jaw broken, lifeless. And then I heard it again. That same damned whistle, faint but unmistakable, as if her spirit refused to be silenced. 2 days later, she's still on the kitchen floor, eyes rolled back, mouth agape, and through it all the tune drifts on. I don't know if it's her ghost or something worse, but I can't escape it. It never stops. Oh, for Minnie. 1. The previous tenant of my new flat left a survival guide. I'm not sure I want to live here anymore. I moved in with my boyfriend yesterday. We've been together for 5 years now, and we're old and wise enough to settle down and finally leave. Our parents' houses. He just turned 24 and I'm 22. He's the love of my life. His name is Jamie, and I couldn't be happier to be living with him. When we decided to make the leap, we spent 2 months looking at flats and houses we couldn't afford to buy yet, so renting was our only option, but the prices were astronomical. For our budget, we would have been lucky to get a box room and a stove. Jamie works for a local 24-hour fast food restaurant, and I'm training to be a teacher. The early stages of training don't pay much, and I owe a lot in student loans, so finances are tough. We had almost given up hope until we found our flat. It was nothing special, but to us it was a palace. A spacious 2-bedroom apartment with views of a city park, a balcony, and local conveniences. It was in a tower block in a not-so-nice area, but neither of us had been wealthy growing up. We weren't fussy, just grateful to be together. The advert was sweetened by the deposit-free option and open-ended tenancy. The landlord was happy to sign a 5-year contract if we wanted. That sort of thing never happens in the city. We were told that along with no deposit, we would also have no inspections, but would be liable to pay for any damage when we ended the tenancy. I'd never heard of anything quite like it. We knew that for our budget and location, we weren't going to get any better. We snapped the place up fast, not even bothering to view it. It felt like our only chance. Move-in day rolled around quickly, and yesterday we got the keys to our first home together. It was such a strange feeling. The day was chaos, getting our stuff in and up in the lift. We were flat number 42 on the 7th floor. The items we couldn't get in the lift had to be taken up all the stairs by the removal men. I think they were grateful we weren't any higher, but I still wish we had been able to give them a better tip. In the evening, we settled down on our second-hand sofa, given to us by a cousin of a friend, and watched some TV. We smoked cigarettes on the balcony looking at the park and fell asleep on our mattress on the floor super early because we had no energy to put the bed together yet, and Jamie had work at a hideous time of the morning. We slept soundly last night. I felt safe and happy. I don't think that feeling is coming back anytime soon, and it's all due to the note I found this morning. I found it in the kitchen, having a coffee, hours after Jamie had left for his early shift at work. It was in one of the cupboards that were fixed to the wall. There were a bunch of useful items from the previous tenant. Spare keys to the flat, a set of tiny keys that locked and unlocked the windows, necessary for those with kids this high up. Spare smoke alarm batteries and a folded-up piece of paper. The note was handwritten with "New occupier of flat 42" in beautiful cursive on the blank side. I opened it up and sat down to read. I can't really describe it to you, so I'm going to copy it out below. Dear new occupier, firstly, welcome to your new home. I lived here before you for 35 years with my husband. Unfortunately, he had an incident at home recently that I'd rather not discuss that claimed his life. My sister has now decided I can't keep up with the demands of the property and has insisted that I move in with her and her husband. I was reluctant at first, but the stairs do kill me at my age, and without Bernie, it's filled with sadness. Anyway, when you've lived somewhere for as long as I have, it feels like a person that, you understand its personality and what makes it tick. I thought it was probably pertinent that I impart some of that knowledge on you. It's a wonderful home, honestly. I have lived through best and worst years, and leaving it behind is very emotional, but if you are to survive and get the best out of it, then there are some steps you need to follow. The landlord will never bother you. He doesn't visit, call, or communicate in any way. But make sure to pay your rent in a timely fashion always. I have only dealt with him once in 35 years, and let's just say I never missed another rent day. Any repairs required, you speak to the agent you rented the place with. Do not use the ID communal lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m. Just don't do it. This step is vital if you are to have a happy life here. It really is life or death. Don't do it. This has cost me and many others in the building greatly, and I would rather not elaborate on why you shouldn't do this. Just please don't do it. I cannot stress this enough. When you hear the strange animal noises coming from flat 48, don't question it. Mr. Prentice lives there and he's a lovely chap. Don't be afraid to say hello to him in the corridor or on the stairs. He's old, school, so he never risks the lift. But whatever you do, don't check on him when you hear the noises. You'll know when you hear them. If you ever come across a window cleaner on the balcony, ignore him. He may seem like the nicest fellow you've ever had trying to sell you something at the door, but it really is best that you don't engage. He will go away if you ignore him, but he tries pretty hard the first few times, so you'll need some resilience. Whatever you do, don't offer him anything. No money, no hot drink. Don't leave food scraps out, bin, or refrigerate them immediately. If you have small animals, it is imperative that you watch them eat and take away any leftover food immediately after they are done. This and Rule 2 go hand in hand. The things forage all day and seem to really love animal feed. You don't want them in your flat, I promise. You can leave what you want out between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m., so you may want to feed your pets then. 6. Don't communicate with any neighbors who claim to come from flats 65-72. These flats suffered a fire in the late 80s that devastated the whole floor. All the residents died in their homes. The building was mostly council-owned at the time, and they never bothered to renovate the flats. They've been empty ever since, but every now and again someone will knock at your door claiming to live in one of these flats and ask to borrow some sugar. They will seem entirely average, but you must shut and lock the door immediately. I installed 2 extra security bolts to avoid these fuckers. I don't like to swear at my age, but they really are fuckers. Simple one for you here. Keep a weapon in each room. Sometimes you follow all these steps and something still slips through the net. Better to be safe than sorry. The building has a committee that will try and get you to join. It's one of those neighbors groups about improving living conditions for all residents. It's a nice group, and the lady who runs it, Terry from Flat 26, is a fantastic neighbor. By all means, get involved. But I wouldn't recommend babysitting Terry's 2 children. She'll ask you because the poor woman needs a break. But if you accept, don't say I didn't warn you. Stray hairless cats sometimes roam in the hallway. I know they're supposedly a special expensive breed, but they don't belong to anyone. They're mostly harmless, but don't pick them up. Not unless you see one of those neighbors that claims to live in 65-72. Then grab the cat and lock it inside with you. It'll burn your skin a little, but the cats are friendly and I wouldn't want to see them hurt. 10. There is no way to fix the damp patch on the ceiling in the bedroom. Sometimes it will turn a deep crimson and look quite concerning. But please, try not to be alarmed. It doesn't drip. It doesn't get any bigger, and it's been there longer than I have. The landlord won't budge on it, according to the agents. I flagged it many times, even called the police the first night it changed color. But it was a waste of time, and it will be for you too. It's best to ignore it. Wordle. You can trust the postman. His name is Ian Flanders, and he's been the postman since before I moved in. He has his own key to the main door and delivers post to the door every morning at 8:54. I can't include everything here, or it would become a novel, but if you have any questions, Ian will help you. 12. Finally, the first few weeks are the worst. You'll feel like you've made a mistake. I'm sure reading this you already do. But if you can get through the first few weeks, it really is a lovely block to live in. Every property has its quirks, and this one is a little extra special. But you can be truly happy here if you just take my advice. I wish you all the best, I really do. Yours truly, Mrs. Prudence Hemmings. I don't really know what to think after reading the note. Hopefully it was some sort of joke, but the agent had said the previous tenant was an elderly lady, and I can't see anyone named Prudence Hemmings attempting to play practical jokes on someone they'd never met. There were also parts of the note I couldn't disprove. There was indeed a large damp patch above the bed that me and Jamie had already discussed reporting. No crimson, but it definitely existed. I had also commented on a beautiful Sphinx cat roaming the halls as we were moving in. I started to get seriously freaked out. Our dream, our beautiful little home, had just become a source of fear and confusion. I checked the time and it was 9:14. Damn it. Out of time to catch Postman Ian. When I opened the door to check, sure enough, 2 letters addressed to a Mrs. Hemmings sat on the doorstep. At about 11:15, my worst fears were truly confirmed when a friendly, middle-aged looking man carrying window cleaning equipment knocked on my balcony door. I ignored him. I didn't want to take the risk until I'd spoken to Jamie and showed him the note. I texted him already to rush home. I felt bad as the man rapped his knuckles against the door for over 10 minutes, but honestly, the longer it went on, the more I was terrified. My windows were sparkling, and due to our lack of curtains, I couldn't even hide from his gaze. I felt so exposed. He stayed for a total of 30 minutes exactly, and never once did he stop looking at me or knocking. He shouted the occasional ultra-friendly line or humble request for a beverage in the heat through the door, but I did my best to avoid eye contact. When he finally left, I looked outside every window in the flat, but I couldn't see him on any of the other balconies or see any equipment suggesting he was around. He had vanished completely. Jamie still hadn't texted me back. He must have been having a rough shift. It was a Friday and they were always busy. It wasn't often that he didn't reply. He was due home in around an hour anyway. I read the note probably hundreds of times over. I tortured myself reading it for the next hour, desperately waiting for Jamie to come through the door to tell me it was all crazy and I should relax. I hoped for that so much. But Jamie never came. His shift should have finished around midday, but by 2 p.m. he still wasn't home. I panicked. I cried. I left over 100 voice messages on his phone but got nowhere. I finally decided it had been long enough that calling his work wouldn't embarrass him, and his boss told me that he had never turned up for his shift. I thought about it. What could have happened? And then it hit me. Jamie's shift started at 4 a.m. today. He would have left the flat at 3:15 and taken the lift down the stairs. I don't know what to do. I've tried to convince myself it was all just a big joke. Maybe Jamie wrote the note and got his boss in on it. A voice in my head kept telling me that he couldn't write like that if he tried, but I had to attempt to fool myself. It's getting late and he still isn't home. What if it's all true? I think we made a big mistake. I've been flying for almost 30 hours, and the flight attendants won't stop crying. 30 hours ago, I hopped on a late-night flight from New York heading to Los Angeles. After boarding, I saw that I had an entire row to myself. Takeoff passed, without incident, and soon I was stretched out for a nap across the row. I slept for a few hours, I don't know how long, but I woke up to some severe turbulence. It's possible that the lights in the cabin went out for a moment, but I was so disoriented that it's hard to say. I checked my phone to see that it was 4:03 a.m., which I figured gave me about an hour until we landed. When I looked out my window, I was shocked to see nothing but wide open ocean. My jaw dropped. There's obviously no ocean between New York and Los Angeles. I hit the button to call the flight attendant and spent the next few minutes racking my brain for a lake that could have possibly been big enough to explain what I was seeing. I jumped when the attendant flipped off the light. She was grinning from ear to ear and tears were pouring down her cheeks. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked. I froze for a moment at her reaction before deciding to just ask my question. "Where are we? Why does it look like we're flying over an ocean?" She wiped her cheeks to clear the tears, still grinning wildly. "Sir, we'll be landing in about an hour." Okay, thank you," I said. After she left, I checked the clock on my phone again. 4:03 a.m. blinked back at me. It hadn't changed. Had to have been waiting with my call light on for at least 5 minutes. How was it possible that it hadn't changed at all? I opened up my laptop and saw it too displayed 4:03 a.m. I pulled out my phone, started a stopwatch in the app, and spent the next 2 hours looking back and forth between the clocks, waiting for them to change. They never did. I tapped the shoulder of an older woman sitting in the row ahead of me. She looked back, an annoyed expression across her face. "Yes?" she asked. "Do you know how long until we land?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes. That flight attendant said it would be about another hour. I shook my head in confusion. That flight attendant we talked almost 2 hours ago. We should have landed already. She stared at me as if I was crazy. I was going to continue trying to convince her, but I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun to see a male flight attendant grinning down at me, tears pinging off his cheeks onto my shoulder. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to calm down, or I'll be calling the captain." I told him that wouldn't be necessary and sat back. He removed his hand and stepped away. The flight attendants continued to stop by every few hours offering meals. My stopwatch continued to tick up and is now telling me that I've been on this plane for more than 30 hours. I've explored all of coach and tried talking to some of the other passengers, but they've all told me that they're expecting to land in an hour or so. Around 3 hours ago, I tried getting into first class. I made it past the curtain but was escorted back by 2 grinning flight attendants. Their grip on my arms were like iron. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on," one said. "Please remain in your seat with your buckle fastened. We'll be landing in about an hour." I'd just about given up hope when a woman came down the aisle dressed in a business suit. She didn't look at me or slow down, but she dropped a piece of paper onto my tray as she made her way to the bathrooms at the back of the plane. I shot a look around before unrolling it. It said, "Are you stuck too?" I pulled out a pen and wrote yes. It's been 30 hours. I folded the scrap of paper up and set it on the tray closest to the aisle. She left the bathroom and picked it up as she passed. It's been 20 minutes since then. I don't know why, but I don't think the flight attendants would like it if they knew we were talking. It doesn't matter, I have to do something. I'll update you all with whatever happens next. A few hours after the businesswoman picked up her piece of paper with my message, she came back down the aisle and sat in the seat beside me. She bent over, trying to stay low. "So you're stuck too?" she asked. I kept my voice low. "Yeah. My name's Jack, by the way. I'd say nice to meet you, but..." She nodded. "I'm Mary. You're wrong. Getting your message was by far the best thing about the past day. I've spent the last day and a half thinking I was alone in this." She paused for a moment, looking up the aisle. When she spoke again, her voice was a whisper. "So Jack, you have any theories on what the hell's going on?" I considered lying but decided the truth was for the best. "I think we might be dead." Mary shook her head. "Maybe if it were just me or just you. If this was some cosmic train to hell, why would there be 2 of us who realize what's going on?" "No idea." Mary pulled out her phone and handed it to me. It displayed the Wikipedia article for Flight MH370, the airline that disappeared in 2014. I read through the article carefully. There were dozens of theories trying to explain what happened. They ranged from hypoxia to suicide to aliens. "Doesn't tell us much," I said. "Not much other than that this may have happened before," she said. "How about you? Any theories as to why anyone else can't see what's going on?" We talked it over and realized one thing we had in common was that we were both fast asleep at 4:03 a.m. There's no way we were the only ones asleep at that time, though. Maybe everyone else was just napping. I don't know about you, but I was well and truly asleep. The cabin lights flicked off and a dozen red emergency lights in the floor flicked on, casting the cabin in a red glow. The intercom crackled to life, saying, "Passengers, please return to your seats. The seatbelt sign is fastened and we may experience some turbulence. We'll be landing in about an hour." Mary froze. "Should I go back?" she asked. "Maybe they won't notice if you're gone, but maybe they already know and they're just trying to separate us." Mary nodded. "We should stay together. That's a better idea." The intercom crackled again. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce the arrival of the captain. We'll all be given the opportunity to speak with him. Please remain in your seats until he calls you. If you need assistance, don't worry. A flight attendant will happily help you on your way." Sounds of passengers getting to their feet echoed from further up in the plane. We sat in silence, trying to get a look through the curtains separating us from first class. "The captain?" I asked. "No idea. But it didn't sound like they were talking about a pilot to me. Did they?" "Nope." That's when a pungent sulfur smell hit us, so strong that I had to resist the urge to gag. It reminded me of the worst rotting eggs I'd ever smelt in my life. But the old woman sitting ahead of us didn't react. She just kept watching a movie on the back of her seat. "Don't cough," I said to Mary. We fought it for a few long seconds before giving in, coughing hard and violently. A second later, the curtain opened. Mary and I froze, staring down the now red fuselage. 4 flight attendants passed through the curtain and made their way down the rows towards us. Grins stretched wide across their faces. They were still crying, but this time the tears streaking. Their faces were darker. It's hard to say with the lighting, but it looked like blood. My eyes weren't drawn to them, though. I looked over their shoulders at the figure standing near the front of the plane. It was a black silhouette standing beside the cockpit door. It was at least 8 feet tall and pointing towards us with a single finger. It had called us. "The bathrooms," I shouted. We ran towards the back of the plane, the flight attendants closing in behind us. Blood dripped from their grinning cheeks onto the carpet of the plane. "The captain is here," he said in a perfect customer service voice. His grin widened as he moved towards us. We made it to the bathrooms, jumping into opposite sides. I slammed the door shut and locked it, pressing my feet against the folding center part of the door to keep it closed. They began banging on the door and pulling at the handle while I fought to keep it closed. "I'm sorry, but you'll both need to speak with the captain," one of the flight attendants said. "Jack!" Mary screamed. "Jack, help!" A distinct snapping sound like breaking metal came from her bathroom. She continued to scream as the sounds of struggle migrated up towards the front of the plane, towards the black figure I'd seen. I'd too like to say I jumped out and fought them, that I distracted them or did something heroic. I didn't. She was carried away, and a few short seconds later, her screaming was cut off. That was a few hours ago, and I'm still locked inside this bathroom. I keep trying not to think of what they've done with her. The thing at the front of the plane didn't seem human. I hope it didn't kill her, not after she was shouting for my help like that. I couldn't take that. I haven't heard any movement outside in a few hours, but I'm terrified to open the door. I'm far from the seat outlet, so my phone's almost dead, and I haven't eaten in way too long. If I go out there, will the flight attendants remember? What if that thing is still waiting for people? I don't have much time to make a decision, but I'll update you all here with what happens next. After another dozen hours or so, I opened the bathroom door. The lights in the cabin were back to normal, and I couldn't smell any sulfur. I cautiously made my way back to my seat and almost cried when the grinning, crying flight attendant came by offering a meal. That crappy airline food was the most delicious thing I'd ever eaten. When I'd finished, my mind immediately turned to Mary. What had happened to her? I crept down the aisle towards first class, trying to keep a low profile. Surprisingly, the flight attendants were nowhere to be seen. They'd almost seemed to ignore me, almost as if they wanted me to find her. She had a row to herself and was staring down at her phone in the window seat. I slid into the aisle and shook her arm. "Mary!" I hissed. She pulled out her headphones and stared at me with a surprised expression. "Yeah? What's going on? Are you okay?" I asked. "What did that thing do to you?" "What did they do to you?" "I'm sorry, remind me how I know you." "What do you mean? I realized with sinking horror that she had no idea who I was. I fought back tears. "Mary, how long have you been on this flight?" She checked the watch on her wrist. "Well, it's 4:03 a.m., so a few hours at least." She stared at me the same way you'd look at a person claiming they were the second coming of Christ. Her tone was low and reassuring. "Hey, don't worry so much. Look on the bright side. We'll be landing in about an hour." I felt an iron grip on my arm and looked up to see 2 flight attendants. "Sir, this area is for first-class passengers only." They were still crying and grinning, but just with tears this time. I could still see streaks of blood staining the front of their uniforms, though. I was escorted back to my seat where I spent the next several days. Attendants continued to stop by with food. I would use the bathroom and soon was going absolutely crazy with the monotony. In retrospect, those few days weren't so bad. There's a lot of content on the internet after all, even with crappy, plain Wi-Fi. No, it didn't get really bad until around 10 days later when the Wi-Fi failed. It was sometime a week later that I lost control and began screaming for a flight attendant. They didn't come for several minutes, but eventually one did. Just let me see the captain," I asked. The flight attendant bent low and spoke with that same customer service voice. "I'm sorry, sir. The captain has made his decision regarding you quite clear. You didn't answer his call and will therefore wait." "How long?" "Quite a while, I'm afraid. Don't worry though, sir. We'll be landing in about an hour." She straightened and walked away. I started making notches on various parts of the seatback to keep track of different things. 1 notch for each time I used the bathroom, 1 for each meal, 1 for every time I watched a given movie, that sort of thing. It was hell. I watched every movie in the seatback a dozen times over. If I ever acted out badly enough, I would be escorted back to my seat by 1 or more flight attendants. Any attempted conversation with other passengers was met with confusion by them, followed by a quick escort back to my seat. I'd guess it was on or around day 30 that, in a moment of panic and psychosis, I broke my laptop and phone, screaming at the top of my lungs. No one around me reacted in any way. 2 months later, I stunk. The muscles in my legs were tight and cramped constantly. I finally concluded that suicide was my only option after my 128 rewatch of Thor Ragnarok. I got to my feet and limped towards the emergency exit. I knew normally the pressure inside the airplane forced the doors closed, but I figured that nothing about my situation was normal. If this didn't work, I'd find some other, more painful way to go. Grabbed at the handle and swung it up. To my shock, the door opened easily, though no wind of any kind whipped around the cabin. It remained the standard, slightly too cold temperature that it had been for the past who knew how long. The open door called to me, a black portal out of the plane. I stared at it for a long moment, almost too long. An attendant's hand grabbed my shoulder, pulling me away. In a fit of anger and strength that surprised me, I wrenched away and jumped out of the plane. The wind whipping past my face was almost magical, a new sensation after so many months of the same. The ocean below me grew closer and larger, and I realized that suddenly I didn't want to die after all. It grew larger and larger and larger, until it seemed that all I could see was darkness and waves. I impacted the surface of the water so fast and hard that my entire body jerked around in the seat. I pulled my hand back, sucking at my bruised knuckle. I'd hit it on the seat in front of me. "No," I whispered, then shouted, "No, no, no." A flight attendant ran down the aisle, kneeling beside me. "Are you okay, sir?" I clenched my hands into fists, almost swinging at her. But then I realized she wasn't grinning. She wasn't crying. To be honest, she looked a little scared of me. I reached my right hand down to my pocket where I could feel my now unbroken phone. "4 a.m. Sir, if you can calm down, we'll be landing in about an hour." My mouth tasted like ash. "Thank you," I managed. "I will." I stared unblinking at my phone. It now displayed 4:05 a.m. Then I looked out my window and began to cry at the sight of city lights below me. We did land in about an hour. I can't even begin to explain why or how, but I'm currently sitting in an airport cafe typing this out. I'm free, I'm out, and I'm never going flying again. Number 2. My missing husband came home, but the face staring back at me wasn't his. My husband went missing 6 months ago. Just went out to work one day and never came home. It was a horrible shock to the whole neighborhood because things like that just didn't happen in our little slice of white picket fence suburbia. The police launched an investigation, and the neighborhood watch sent out search parties, but no one ever found any evidence to indicate what had happened to him. Our families were devastated. Recently, the missing posters have been taken down or papered over. The updates from the police became less frequent and dwindled away. I accepted that. Hard as it was to admit, my Rick wasn't coming back. Until he did. A week ago, I was in the back garden watering my petunias when I heard the garden gate creak open. I jerked my head in that direction, and there he was. Exactly the same as he was the day he disappeared. Same windswept blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Same curl to his pink lips. I was in shock. Our families had mourned for him, and yet there he was, standing in our garden like he had just popped out for milk or something. When I asked where he had been, he said he didn't know. He couldn't remember anything about the last 6 months. All our family and friends are beside themselves with joy. They almost can't believe it, but that's just the thing, I don't believe it. Look, I understand how crazy this all sounds, I do. Our families would never believe me, and I can't go to the police unless I want to end up in a straitjacket. But I just know that the man sleeping next to me isn't my husband. I don't know what to do. I know I should be happy, but I'm not. I'm terrified. I don't know much about anything supernatural or paranormal. I don't even like watching horror movies. But something about this whole situation makes my skin crawl. Just let me explain why I'm so sure. Once I've done that, hopefully one of you will believe me and you'll be able to tell me what to do. The morning after Rick came home, I made him a cup of tea. When I handed it to him, he gave me the brightest smile. Then he took a sugar cube from the dish on the table and dropped it into the cup. Our house was in chaos with his return, and I was still in shock, so I didn't think much of it at the time, but it's been replaying in my mind ever since. I know it doesn't sound very significant, but my husband never put sugar in his tea. He was always adamant that it ruined the taste, and he'd get so frustrated if I ever put sugar in his cup by accident. And yet this man had sugar. Then it was the golf. A few days ago, when he was out visiting his mom, I recorded a golf tournament that was showing on the TV. It was one of Rick's favorite golfers that was competing, and he never missed it. Once he even skipped out on an anniversary dinner just to watch a championship. Only when he came home from his parents and I told him what I'd done, he just seemed unbothered. Like he said thanks and everything, and then he asked if I wanted to get dinner. He didn't even watch it, and that's just so out of character for him. Then one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to see Rick's face inches from mine, just looking at me with these blank eyes. I kinda gave this nervous laugh and asked, "Baby, what are you doing?" And he didn't answer. For like a solid 30 seconds, he just stared, almost like he was looking right through me. Then he suddenly smiled and said, "Sorry, honey, sometimes I just can't believe this is real." Then he just rolled over and went to sleep. I didn't get much sleep after that myself. Yesterday, about a week after he came home, the neighborhood threw a street party to celebrate his return. Everyone from our street and the streets on either side turned up to see him and tell him how happy they are that he's all right. When he wasn't standing, with his arm around my waist, he was milling around chatting amicably to each and every one of our neighbors, even the little kids. Jackson, our next-door neighbor, Sally's toddler, wanted to play peekaboo, and Rick happily played along with a smile on his face. Now, my husband never did that. Rick always said he didn't like kids, that's why we never had any. And so he never wanted to play with any of the neighborhood children, especially not Jackson. Rick all but avoided him. Before he disappeared, I had started to suspect it was so I wouldn't see them together, and noticed the subtle but unmistakable similarities. The final nail in the coffin, proverbially speaking, was Sally. Just this morning, she came knocking on our door. Her excuse was the tray of brownies she carried, but I think she just wanted to push her way into our morning so that she could see for herself what the situation was. After she left, I called her a nosy busybody. Rick laughed, kissed my head, and agreed with me. That was when I knew for sure that it couldn't really be him. Rick always used to get so mad whenever I insulted Sally, like I didn't have any right to hate her even though she'd been fucking my husband for years. But today, there was none of that. He didn't even try to defend her. I know what you must be thinking. If he was in an accident or something, he might have had some kind of traumatic brain injury that caused him to forget some things about his life, maybe even change his personality, and that's a valid, reasonable explanation. I have no doubt it's what the police would tell me if I reported all this. But you know why I'm dead certain that man isn't my husband? He doesn't have a scar. If he was really Rick, he'd have a scar on the side of his forehead shaped like the golf club I hit him with. But there's nothing. Not a mark. Honestly, I'm this close to going out tonight and digging up my petunias just to make sure he's still under there. I don't know what I'm sharing a bed with, but I know it's not my husband. So what the hell am I going to do? We've been stuck in construction traffic for 8 hours now. If we leave our vehicles, we will die. Lauren is in the Honda Accord right behind my truck, with our 2 cats, but I can't get out and see her. The last guy who got out was shot in the legs and then run over by a tank. We set out yesterday from Gainesville, Florida, where Lauren had recently graduated from law school. We were moving to my home state of Maine to start a permanent life together. The drive was beautiful most of the way, and Lauren and I spent a lot of time on speakerphone with each other to comment on it. A couple of times we passed through rain, and once a really wild thunderstorm that lit up the whole sky for miles. Then, about 8 hours ago, we hit a traffic jam on I-95 just outside of Lewiston, Maine. I took a look at the navigation thing on my phone, but it didn't show any red areas of heavy delay. It also had some trouble showing my exact location, though. So I lit a cigarette and figured it would just be a few minutes. After about 15 minutes, I called Lauren. "How's it going back there?" I asked. In the background, I could hear the cats going nuts. "Not great," said Lauren. "Do you hear Hanky and Hattie howling? They started up as soon as we stopped." "What's going on?" "Must be an accident that just happened. My phone usually gives a heads up if there's planned construction or something." I heard one of the cats hiss while the other one yowled. "I'm so tired," said Lauren. "I know, me too. Let's stop and get something to eat once we're through, yeah?" "Okay." "All right. Love you. Sorry about the cats." "Love you," said Lauren. I hung up and tried to get something on the radio. I have a base model 2006 Toyota Tundra, so no AUX jack, and the CD player had broken years ago. During the entire trip, I had been at the mercy of radio stations, and for the most part they didn't do much for me other than create a general atmosphere of annoyance. Now though, I couldn't even keep the radio on. What wasn't warbling static was some kind of distorted robotic voice reading off a list of numbers and random words strung together. Across the whole radio band, same thing. I couldn't take it, so I shut it off. I picked my phone back up and went to check Twitter. All I got was that game where you have to jump the dinosaur over cacti faster and faster and then it gets dark out and the birds come. No internet. Finally, Twitter did half load. So there was some intermittent reception there, barely. After a half hour had passed, I started to get antsy, and so did everyone else. People were sticking their heads out the window to try to see what was going on, but it was no use. The line of cars seemed endless. A few people got out of their vehicles to try to get a better look. I got out too, and started walking to Lauren's car. When I was halfway there, a voice cut into the air. It sounded like someone shouting through a bullhorn. "Return immediately to your vehicles. No one is permitted to be outside. This is your only warning. If you do not heed it, there will be severe consequences." "What the fuck is going on?" Some guy shouted in a thick Boston accent. He was standing a few car lengths in front of me. An instant later, he was down on the ground, not moving. I didn't see what happened exactly, but that was enough to make me to hustle back to my truck. I tried calling Lauren again. When she answered, all that I could hear were broken flashes of the cat screaming and Lauren sounding scared and begging to know what was happening. "I don't know," I said, not sure that she could hear it. Maybe they're searching for a criminal or something, I don't know. Then we were disconnected. A minute later, an ambulance was wailing its way down the right-hand shoulder. It stopped just past my truck, and 2 EMTs jumped out of the back. They closed the doors behind them, but I saw that there was somebody else in there, somebody dressed in riot gear holding a big gun. The EMTs dragged the guy with the Boston accent by the arms over to the ambulance. They opened the doors and sort of tossed him in, and then followed behind. I saw the riot gear person again for a second, and then the doors slammed shut and the ambulance sped off down the shoulder out of sight. Somebody 4 cars ahead of me got the idea to follow the ambulance out of there. I watched as a red Hyundai Sonata with a New Jersey license plate tore into the shoulder lane and sped after the ambulance. I tried calling Lauren to ask her if she thought we should try it too. It was a ballsy move for sure, but she had sounded at the end of her rope stuck in there with our wailing cats, so I thought she might be willing to give it a shot. This time the call didn't even go through. I was getting ready to try calling again when I heard this loud blast. A puff of smoke blossomed somewhere up ahead, and all of a sudden, there were chunks of a car flying through the air. A red car, very likely a red Hyundai Sonata. As I watched a flaming tire roll to a stop against the highway divider, I decided not to replicate New Jersey's maneuver. I heard the blast of a horn behind me, and looked in the rear view to see that Lauren had her arm out the window, moving her hand around in a circle. Finally, it hit me that she was telling me to roll down my window, so that's what I did. "Can you hear me?" she shouted. "I can." I could even hear the cats. They sounded really freaked out. "What is happening?" she asked. "I don't know, baby. I think we're in some kind of military lockdown, maybe. I think we have to just sit tight here." "Can you throw me a bottle?" asked Lauren. "What? A bottle, like Gatorade or something? I know that you've probably got 10 of them in your front seat." It was true. Not 10 exactly, but close enough. I just threw all of my trash on the seat of my truck until it started overflowing, whereas Lauren kept her car clean. "What are you going to do with the bottle?" I asked. "Not something I want to shout out for the whole world to hear," said Lauren. "Let's just say we've been here a while and I don't think we're coming to a rest stop soon enough." Finally, I understood. I reached over and grabbed a bottle. I chucked it out the window, but it was a bad throw and bounced off the hood of Lauren's Honda. I tried again, and this time she caught it. She rolled up her window, and in the rearview mirror I watched her fuss around as she presumably tried to pee into the thing. This was when the fleet of massive trucks started rolling in, on the southbound side of the highway divide. Some of them had cranes sitting on long flatbeds, and others had big chunks of some kind of metal material. Soon, the southbound side was jammed up with these giant trucks in their haul. Then they started to get to work. "What are they doing?" asked Lauren. She'd opened her window back up. "Are they building a fucking wall?" That is exactly what it looked like they were doing. One crane would take a massive chunk of material and lift it into place either next to or on top of another chunk. "Yes, they're walling us in," I shouted. I checked my phone for the 1,000th time. I had a bar and used it to call 911, a lady answered. "What is the address for this emergency?" I-95 northbound, just before Lewiston, Maine. I forget the exit number we were coming up on. "I'm sorry." "That's okay. What is the emergency?" "Well, we're in this weird traffic jam and people are dying here. Cars are exploding. They're building a wall around us. They're trapping us here." I know that sounds crazy. There was a long silence on the other end. I thought maybe we'd been disconnected. But then I heard her voice again, crystal clear. "Sir, I am going to need you to remain calm and stay in your vehicle. And if you would, roll down your window. Not the driver's side, the passenger's side." What? I asked. Then, I heard the tapping at my window. There was a lady cop standing there, holding a cell phone up to her ear. My heart jumped up into my throat and my instinct was to slam my foot on the gas pedal, but there was nowhere to go. I rolled down the window. "You reported an emergency?" asked the cop. "Everything looks okay to me. We don't discourage anyone from calling emergency services if they truly think that there might be an emergency situation occurring. But everything appears to be perfectly fine here. I will give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but remember that we also very strongly frown upon fraudulent 911 calls. You could be charged for that, sir, it's no joke." "Oh," I said, trying to hold it together. "I'm sorry about that. I did think that something bad was going on, but now I see that everything is okay. Thanks for checking in." "It's no problem at all, sir," said the cop, smiling. "And remember, stay in your vehicle." "Of course," I said, trying to smile, though I'm sure my face looked like a sweaty pretzel instead. The cop nodded and then walked off down the line of cars. I waited a few minutes and then called out to Lauren. "I think we're fucked," I said. "I called 911 and that cop that was just here, she's the one who picked up. She said everything's fine, but it's not." "Fuck," said Lauren. "What do we do?" That's when the guy jumped out of his car and made a break for the wooded area to the right of the highway. And that's when they shot him in the legs. I heard him cry out and watched him hit the ground. I heard a loud, continuous rumble, interspersed with snaps from the woods. Then I saw the tank. It didn't so much emerge from the woods as it destroyed the woods in its wake. Beyond it, I saw another enormous wall. We were walled in from 2 sides, and my guess was that we were walled in from 4 sides. The tank crushed the man like he was a particularly small ant. They are working on the roof now, it's almost done. Once the roof is on, I have a feeling that I won't get any reception at all. Before that happens, I'm hoping for one more spike so that I can get this post out. I don't know if this is on the news or not. I thought it was just a traffic jam, so that's probably how they're playing it off. They probably have rerouted traffic around us by now. I don't know what this is. But there are now dozens of heavily armed people in riot gear going from car to car. Sometimes they drag somebody out and carry them screaming off to what remains of the wooded area where they disappear from sight. They're almost at my truck now. I hope they skip me and Lauren. Oh God, I'm going to tell her that I love her. If this reaches you, I don't know what you can do, but please try to help us. 5. I deliver for anonymous people. One of my packages escaped. Well, to start off, I should say what my occupation is. I used to be a delivery driver. Well, I still am, just not in the traditional delivering mail and goods to suburban homes sense. I was fired from that job. I can admit it was my fault. I had been caught stealing packages from my own van. I don't regret it. Customers always got refunds or a replacement sent their way due to their package being lost in transit. But I had to make a living and put bread on the table for my family. And when the job wasn't paying enough, the pawn shop pulled through. My wife did the best she could during those times of living check to check. Many of our meals were sacrificed so our children could eat. Getting fired seemed like a death sentence. And it was through my shady and short-term solution of obtaining some extra cash that I ultimately felt like I had dug 4 graves. It was my friend Jason who saved our family from our financial struggle. He's an ex-Marine, employed by a private military company, and had more connections than I had previously assumed. You'd think he was an angel with how damn quiet and polite he is all the time, but I promise you, under that shining halo, tucked under those white feathered wings, there's blood money. He never told me what type of operations he exactly did. I got the sense the reason for this was less because he has some sort of NDA, and more likely those memories are tucked away behind several mental locks. But Jason, like me, was in a tough spot, especially after leaving the United States military. He needed money, and so he used the skills he possessed to make as much as he could. I think that's why he suggested the job to me. He could see I was in the same place he was. Although in my case, I have 2 kids relying on me. We met at a local bar to talk shop. As he explained it, this job will be just like your old one but easier. You could be making half of 7 figures, if you choose your battles right. Of course, I thought he was bullshitting me. No delivery job could offer money like that. I know now that he was telling the truth. Not all of it, but the truth nonetheless. A few weeks ago was the first time I attempted a higher risk delivery. Since I'm fairly new, I've only been allowed to accept lower risk stuff. Guns, drugs, stolen goods, banal contraband. We're not really supposed to look at what we're delivering, but it's not hard to guess when you're crossing borders and are explicitly told to follow road laws to a T before arriving at isolated warehouses and factories with hidden inventories. But since I've completed all of my deliveries with no issues for the past several months, the opportunities for me have expanded from pennies and nickels to Benjamins. Of course, once I was eligible to deliver the creme de la crop of deliveries, I aimed for the stars and accepted the most expensive I could find. How my job works is very simple. I drive somewhere to pick up a package. I then drive with the package to the customer and deliver it at the drop-off. Then I ditch the vehicle. Either way, the job's simple if you don't think too hard about it, and I feel lucky to have found it after having been laid off. Except this damn high-paying delivery. I understand now why it paid so well. Practically the pay of 15 standard deliveries. I had to drive all the way across the US from the Midwest, where I live, to the western deserts to access the pickup spot. As my agent told me over the radio, the van containing the package would be waiting in an isolated and abandoned factory. It was kind of uncanny seeing a clean black Mercedes Sprinter van so lonely in the gutted architecture. More details of the delivery are found once you enter the delivery vehicle. There's a mounted tablet on the dash with the route to the destination preloaded. Tablet is also destroyed along with the van. When I first started out, I'd enter the cargo area to see the package I was delivering. But I've seen enough to stop caring, or at least force myself to stop caring. However, because this was such a high-paying delivery, it was just too enticing. When I was settling into the driver's seat, I spotted in the rearview mirror, angled through a window in the van's partition, a singular metal crate strapped to the van's floor. This wasn't shocking, but it did set off a spiraling curiosity within me. Normally, I would deliver crates of bulk goods, and now I was receiving a fraction of a CEO's salary for driving around a 3-foot crate. And oddly enough, with the scarce glances I did take at the crate, there looked to be breathing holes scattered over its surface. I played the guessing game in my head as I drove the van out of the factory. Is this thing radioactive, hence the thick steel walls? Obviously, this job is more dangerous, hence the higher pay. Was it a bomb that could explode at any moment? Was it the chopped-up corpse of some high-up government official? My tires left the disheveled pavement and hit the clean tarmac of the main road I'd be driving down for the next few hours. I settled on a nearly exotic animal. 4. A few hours everything remained boring, just as I liked it. I periodically glanced in the rearview mirror at the box that was held still with metal and rope. Nothing about it had changed. It was inoffensively innate and not a single sound had emitted from the thing. I tried accelerating over a pothole to see if I could get some type of reaction, only to be left with a sore butt. I was driving through some middle-of-nowhere desert across a winding mountainside when I got a call on my satellite phone. It was my agent, as I like to call him. He tells me to refer to him as Conrad, though. He was the one who proposed the jobs like a glorified DoorDash app. Agent Conrad is also the person I report everything to. In this instance, he was calling for a routine check-in. "Hello, Z, I see you're 3 hours into your route. Everything's cool so far?" Conrad asked. "Smooth sailing, just tedious. Haven't seen nothing but sand and dirt for miles. Got a few vultures interested in the van, how to shake 'em off my tail." I chuckled. "If anything else starts following you, just let me know. You have over a day's drive and we trust you to complete this delivery without complications." Conrad gave his earnestly unhumorous response as usual. I hung up the phone. What I didn't know was there would, in fact, be a complication, and it revealed itself with a horrid, scraggly voice. "And in dirt?" I didn't know it at the time, but then and there I should have pulled that van over and called my agent. It was just quiet enough that I debated, for longer than I'd like to admit, whether it was in my head. I resumed the drive in silence, still examining the small metal crate through the partition's window. Maybe the noise came from the satellite phone. As I thought to myself, it could have been some odd feedback glitch from the conversation with Conrad, but when I glanced at the satellite phone on the passenger seat, it was off. I even tried turning down the already muted radio, and then it spoke again. "Sandy and dirt, sand and dirt, sand and dirty sand and..." The voice behind me, behind the partition, grumbled rapidly and fluctuated in pitch and speed like a rewinding VHS tape. It came from the metal crate. Out of pure reaction from the absurdity of the sound, I spun myself to look at the cargo area. I took my eyes off the road for one damn moment, just to see nothing but a dormant crate. None of this would have happened if I sat still and ignored the voice. I should have expected this. It was a high-paying delivery after all. Something was going to throw me off, but I fell for the bait. Before I could even set my eyes back on the pavement my tires had already left behind, I was heading toward a steep and jagged cliffside. I swerved as hard as I could as the wall of rock plummeted toward me. This might have not been the best maneuver I could have done, but it likely saved me. Instead of crashing head-on at 65 mph, my van caught the lip where it connected to the ground and drove up it like a steep ramp. At some point, the van flipped sideways, as I recall from the aftermath. I woke up probably an hour after the crash, hot and thirsty and with a banging headache. Other than that, I was fine. Physically, at least. Because when I checked the cargo to see if it was intact, I realized it slammed through the now chasmed ceiling, and it cracked open when it landed on the ground, partially buried beneath the sand. I just destroyed the cargo for a 6-figure delivery. I thought to myself. I pushed through the headache to crawl out of the van and limp over to the corpse of the metal crate, hoping to see its contents, whatever they were, would still be in one piece. My hopes were crushed when all I saw was a lump of some type of pale goop spilled and dried up among the sand. I took the opportunity to examine it, though. It was nothing like I had seen before. At my old job, I once delivered to a home with a mountain of packages out front. Worried, I checked the package dates to see that some of the envelopes and boxes were almost a month old. When I walked up to their front door to knock, I smelled what I could only describe as pure rot. The smell of death. That's the scent this rough monotone blob emitted. As I continued gawking at it, I noticed something else. There were footprints in the sand. Well, rather, it looked like someone had dragged themselves through the sand only to stand up moments later and walk away on bare feet through the searing sand. Yet there were no footprints heading toward the crate. With the pounding headache, dehydration, and anxiety of the situation, I was perplexed. There was no way a person could have fit in that small container. And it didn't matter if they did or didn't. They're walking in 100+ temperatures on scalding ground. And to add on to my confusion, I was afraid. I wasn't just afraid of being fired. This was more than that. My employers were secretive. If I was caught and was found delivering something under illegal circumstances, which this and all of my deliveries most definitely were, I'm going to prison where I'll probably be the victim of a hit. And that's if the government gets to me first. Fear is on a whole nother level when you don't know what it is you're supposed to be afraid of. So, I grabbed my backpack from the wreckage with presumably enough food and water for the journey, and immediately began following the mystery footprints. I didn't know who or what I was looking for, but I was going to find it. I would figure out from there how I would get the package back without a weapon if they were armed. I admit what I was doing was stupid. It was blisteringly hot out and I was wandering out in the desert wilderness. The footsteps seemed to go on forever too. Every time I reached the top of a hill, I hoped I'd see the person making these footprints, but they disappeared into the endless horizon. Any fear I had of becoming lost, of succumbing to dehydration, to the intense heat of the afternoon sun, was all overshadowed by the chilling conclusions of what my employers would do if I didn't report back with anything satisfactory. And I had a very long stroll to think about this, years on scalding ground. And to add on to my confusion, I was afraid. Thank you for tuning in to The Reddit Scientist. If you enjoyed the stories and would like to hear more, please be sure to drop a like and hit the subscribe button. I post daily videos exactly like these, so put yourself to sleep. Until next time.